Hello everybody, and welcome back to Flashback Friday. The following story is my absolute favorite deleted trip report. It marked the very first time that I ever told a story after consuming kratom, which meant it was extremely entertaining. But anyway, I'm not going to do my usual bullshit intro garbage that everyone's bored of. Let's just jump headfirst into this deleted video. It originally aired in 2016, and now it is finally back live for you all to enjoy again. No, but seriously, some real talk like those gangster dudes say. How have I aged? I actually think I look better now. You can see that my face has more wrinkles. Today's video goes out to all of my dead homies. Allow me to preface this video by saying, kids, do not try this at home. What I'm about to share with you is a story from my past, and in the past I was about half as intelligent as I am today, and I'm still not the sharpest tool in the shed. So yeah, you can learn from me and, well, not do drugs. Except if we're talking about drugs, psychedelics aren't really drugs, they're more like medicine or tools, and if you're not the sharpest tool in the shed like I am, then they can really sharpen you up. But none of you guys heard that from me. Wink wink. Today's video is going to be the story of my very first time ever candy flipping. Now, for those of you who don't know what candy flipping is, well, it's combining LSD with MDMA. In most instances, I am the biggest advocate of never mixing drugs together because the wrong combination could seriously end you up dead. But if you are going to mix substances, you need to learn which ones synergize well together. There's a website called tripsit.me which has a really cool drug combination chart that you can check out. They also have more detailed reports which outline exactly what combinations of certain drugs to avoid, and if you are to accidentally combine those drugs, what your symptoms might be. Because this really is no joke. For example, if you're on medication like SSRIs and you were to take a monoamine oxidase inhibitor, such as the admixture in Ayahuasca, you could wind up with serotonin syndrome, which can be fatal. So you really do need to take precautions. And I feel bad just telling this story because I don't want to look like I'm someone who advocates combining substances, because I'm really not. However, there are certain substances that when combined can synergize and create a very synergistic experience. This story takes place while myself and my girlfriend were living in New Zealand. We were living in a very small city called Huia. Well, I guess I can't even call it a city. It wasn't even really a town. It was more just like a spot on a map that had some houses. It was beautiful. We had access to our own private beach while we were living there.
Currently I'm on a hunt for some magical things in the forest.
The only downside was we were living in a house full of people who didn't really like us. Before deciding to go on the trip, there was a bit of a debate of whether you take the LSD first or the MDMA first. The primary concern that I found that people have is if you take the MDMA first, well, LSD lasts twice as long as MDMA. So you're guaranteed to come down off the MDMA while you're still experiencing the LSD high. And if you know anything about an LSD high, it's greatly dependent on your emotions. And when you come down off MDMA, it can kind of pull you into a downward spiral. It can be depressing. MDMA is one of those substances where you just feel so alive and so warm and so full of love that when the experience starts to leave you, you're kind of like wanting to like grab hold of it and do anything you can to get it back. Undergoing this come down while experiencing acid is not thought to be pleasurable. But the way I saw things was if you take the MDMA first, you don't have to worry about those nasty LSD come-ups. The most uncomfortable part for me of an LSD trip is the come-up. Those initial anxious feelings. It's almost like you're slowly starting to lose your mind. Not in a negative way, and the most positive way you can imagine losing your mind would be like. Because you lose your mind and you join with the universal consciousness. But before I sound too much of a hippie, let me just cut that short and say that we did the MDMA first. Now, this was some of that Dutch fire, the best MDMA I had ever experienced in my life. I had not a care in the world. I felt like everything was perfect just the way it was. I had a really smooth come-up. Now, my girlfriend, on the flip side of that, had a pretty rough time. As soon as it started to kick in, so about 30 minutes in, she was on the porch and she was upchucking. Once the substance had fully taken hold, we decided to go for a walk, and we were having a really nice time. Just chatting, it really makes you open up and communicate, but everything is kind of, I want to say, tainted with just this over-the-top, lovey-dovey, emotional energy. It can almost feel fake at times. Like, I'm not sure that everything you do express on MDMA is 100% honest, because like you'll be hanging out with a friend who's not even your best friend, and you guys will be like hugging and telling each other that you've been like best friends since day one, and like you'll fully mean this, and then the next day you're kind of like sitting beside your buddy going like, I just met this guy yesterday. Anyway, so about an hour and a half had passed, and we decided that it was time to take the LSD. My theory proved correct. I didn't even feel the come up. We were still just so entranced by our walk and by communicating with each other that by the time the LSD had started to kick in and we were getting some visual distortions, I didn't even notice it. It's like 1 second you just go from enjoying the M high, and then the next second, bam, you're just full on into an LSD trip. There's not really much of a buildup. Like, there might be a minute or two when you're kind of like aware something's slightly changing, but it's not like when you initially take LSD and you're just sober going into it and you're aware of all the little subtle differences that start happening, like your skin might slowly start to get more sensitive and uncomfortable feeling, and you might feel like an alien inside your own body. When you've got the M just making you feel okay and in love with everything and everybody, even if you do notice the LSD kicking in, you're just like, oh, this feeling is great. I'm so in love with being an alien right now. Like, fucking love aliens, man. Shit. Now, I can remember the visuals and the mental effects were starting to get really intense. One of the things that happens when you combine these two substances is they potentiate each other. So the MDMA can make, say, 1 tab of LSD feel kind of like 2 tabs of LSD. So even though I didn't have any anxiety during the come up, I was getting a little uncomfortable with being outside. I just wanted to relax and sit down in the comfort of, well, I can't even say we wanted to go back to the comfort of our own house, because we were kind of living with people who weren't making us feel comfortable. So we just lived in our bedroom, which was only big enough for the bed. So yeah, pretty much lived on top of a bed. I just wanted to get back to my home, the bed. This leads me to one of the most remarkable experiences that I've ever had on a substance. And trust me, that's saying a lot. We decided to sit down in the grass outside of the house. And keep in mind, there's no like streetlights out here. Like, we are as much in the woods as you can imagine. We're basically living in the jungle, right? The only lighting we were getting was just from the cosmos. The stars and the moon was the only thing that was lighting up our faces. And it wasn't really illuminating us enough to really make out facial features. So it was kind of like my imagination was interpreting what her face should have looked like. So here's the scenario. We were sitting down face to face across from each other. And at this point, I was just letting go of everything. My ego, my worries, my stresses, my anxieties. I was experiencing what it's like to just be. I started to see this figure kind of raising out of her body. It was like from her shoulders to her head, there was another pair of shoulders and another head slowly drifting up and just morphing above her. And I felt as though I was looking at the essence of a human being. I was being shown in physical form the essence of all of humanity, for that matter. And it was both hideous and beautiful all at the same time. In fact, it was so hideous that its ugliness made it beautiful. The image that I was seeing coming out of her was like this really gooey looking, dripping, garbagey looking monster that looked like a muck from Pokemon. And this thing looked like it was suffering so deeply. It was just filled with pain and hurt and hatred and every kind of negative emotion you can imagine. Looking back, maybe I wasn't seeing the essence of humanity, but I was witnessing in physical form her letting go of all of her demons. And I don't know, I can't help but feel like it was beautiful. That moment forever changed me. Sounds kind of stupid looking back at it. I saw my girlfriend transform into a muck, and I was enlightened. I wouldn't say that the muck enlightened me, but it was one hell of an experience. It's really difficult to articulate this because the creature that lifted out of her, it was like listening to a really sad symphony. And you know that the music that you're listening to is just breathtakingly beautiful. but the emotions that it's giving you are just ones of sadness. And at that moment, you kind of question if sadness is really a negative emotion or not. And I think you come to realize that there's just, there's really no such thing as, say, good or evil. It's all just a matter of perspective. But yeah, it would appear that all of humanity is just gorgeous slime. Captivating, gorgeous slime. After this, we went back into the house, and I forgot to mention that when we had started, we decided to have this experience that night because everybody else was out at some kind of a party that we weren't invited to. So when we went back into the house, they were all home, and that was a little awkward trying to like briskly walk to our bedroom without them realizing that we were just blitzed out of our minds. And I'll never forget the feeling of just locking ourselves in the room. And I felt like I had these invisible tentacles that I was shooting out, and they were diving deep underground and connecting with the roots of the house. And in that same regard, everybody who was in the house, I could feel their energy because wherever they were touching the house, they were touching me. I was the house. And I was picking up all of the nasty vibes from them outside and all of their judgment and all of their dislikes for us, which I should just preface right now by saying they had no idea that we were really into doing these kind of experiences. They might have had some kind of a hint, but they had done mushrooms themselves and they weren't really against this. So them disliking us had nothing to do with us wanting to explore our consciousness. It was for totally other reasons. But anyway, I could feel their dislike for us, and it was really unsettling. I felt as though they were kind of like Neanderthals, and we were all these primitive, like we were these ape-like creatures again, and I felt like I needed to get like a big club and guard the door. So I stayed up for hours just with laser eyes staring at that door, half expecting one of them to barge in with like a knife or something and to attack us. This is that acid paranoia that a lot of people are quite familiar with. It's not the most pleasant part of the experience. I was also feeling a lot of pressure on myself because I'm the male and I'm with my partner who's female, and I was feeling like that primal instinct to protect her. I had to protect my family from these evildoers. And all I could think about at that time was just how badly I wanted to move into a more loving and uplifting environment. And sure enough, the next day, we started looking for a new place to live. All in all, part of the concern that I forgot to touch on was coming down on the MDMA while you're experiencing the LSD. And I actually didn't even feel this at all. I experienced no come down. It was kind of like a smooth transition from being really high. And then when the LSD kicked in, the LSD really just completely took over. It wasn't like I was experiencing being high on M and high on acid. It wasn't like I could separate between the two. I was just having an all in all mind-blowing experience. So yeah, there was no come down, thankfully. I believe that if I was on a smaller dose of acid, like if I was on a very low dose, one that didn't have the effects of just taking me right out of my mind and pulling me into a different dimension of thought, then I probably would have experienced a come down because I would have still been very much in this reality. When you're taking a high enough dose of LSD that even if you took it sober, you would just have little connection with physical reality a couple hours in, then how do you expect to really experience an MDMA come down when you're not even like feeling as though you're inside your own mind or inside your own body for that matter? So yeah, the come down really was non-existent. Alright guys, that concludes today's episode of Flashback Friday. Huge thank you to everyone who's supporting the channel on Patreon, and if you haven't already, head on over to psychsubstance.shop and pick up your very own hooded trip blanket, super soft trip blanket, or rather, I mean pre-order. We should have our order in relatively soon, so if you are waiting for your blanket to ship, it shouldn't be too much longer. Till next time, stay safe guys, and please let me know below which previously deleted video you would like to see next. Take care everybody, and goodbye.